Introducing On the Horizon, a podcast by Horizon Resources Cooperative, supporting farmers and ranchers across northwest North Dakota and northeast Montana. Join host Levi Hall as he engages with agronomy experts, grain traders, and community leaders, sharing insights to help you make confident, informed decisions for your operations. From market trends to practical advice, we bring you the conversations that matter.
Horizon Resources, solutions for your success.
Welcome back to another episode of On the Horizon. This week we have Jon Berglund from Prairie Land Ag. Prairie Land Ag is a buying group that we joined last year to help us source our crop nutrients and crop protection. And this group allows us to have a little bit more power in the market. When we go out, we try and fill our plant, or we're out negotiating with manufacturers. So I'm excited for you to listen to this one and hear about the value that Prairie Land brings to Horizon Resources. And we talked a bit about fertilizer markets. So Jon gives us a few glimmers of hope that maybe we'll see a little bit more economical prices coming down the pipe. Enjoy the show.
From hunting season to ranching season, Horizon Resources has you covered. Firearms you trust. Ranch supplies built to last. Local service right here in Williston.
Welcome back to another episode of On the Horizon. This time, Jon Berglund. Jon, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Levi.
So, Jon, you work in a really unique company that is somebody that we are a new member of. Right about a year, I think, is when we put ink to paper.
Mm-hmm.
So, Prairie Land Ag, tell us about your role and about Prairie Land as a whole.
So my role would be taking care of the individual members like yourselves. Prairie Land Ag, we were founded 30 years ago, a little over 30 years ago, basically to support independent co-ops, privately owned retail businesses, and help them compete with the large national organizations. Our goal is to empower our members and help you guys be successful, sustainable, so on and so forth. We, at our core, are a buying group, so that's strategic procurement of crop nutrients, crop protection, specialty products, and other nutritional products. Where we're here to help our members. We're always open to what you guys need, which means sometimes we get into human resources solutions, insurance, grower financing, and alternative risk management strategies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, the really nice part about Prairie Land Ag, you guys are there to help us find the most competitive markets so we can come to our growers and say, you know, we've scoured every producer because this buying group is a pretty large buying group. It has quite the footprint. Why don't you talk a little bit about that footprint, Jon? You guys shoot all the way down into Kansas?
Yes, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And all the way to Wisconsin and all the way out to Montana.
Yeah. So that's a big footprint. There's a lot of members of Prairie Land Ag within that footprint. And so that incentivizes there's nobody too small. And so there's nobody that's going to be locked out. When Prairie Land Ag calls and says, hey, we're looking for some tons of urea or whatever it may be, that changes the conversation rather than if it's an independent cooperative or private retailer that picks up the phone and tries calling a big multinational.
I haven't felt very many, I haven't seen anywhere where we really can't help somebody yet, but yes, we're open, we're here to help. And at the end of the day, together we are $1.4 billion, which if we were one person in the Crop Life 100, that would put us in the top 5.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's some serious buying power. It's a serious market player. And the manufacturers all know who you guys are, and they're all itching to work with you. And that means, once again, that's bringing value back to our members because you guys are helping us.
You're probably seeing some grower consolidation on your guys' end. And like you said, you've scoured the country. It kind of forces you to look outward for where your next margin stream is.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a they're a really unique company. You guys are. We're happy to be members of it. We're happy to be partners on it, and we've already seen a phenomenal return on it.
We're super happy to have you guys, and I'll say it's been the most fun I've had in my entire career because it is helping people.
Yeah. So Dr. Audrey Carlisle was the one that kind of pointed me towards this conversation. Um, she had recently gone to a StoneX or listened to a StoneX podcast, one of the two. I'm not really sure, but she got into um, the idea of we should have a fertilizer market. We've done a lot of grain market podcasts, but we have yet to do a fertilizer market one. And I thought, boy, that is a great idea, Audrey. And let me grill somebody about why is the fertilizer price so high? See how I get to do this now, John? I don't have
Making me squirm right off the bat.
I don't have to be the one fielding this call from the farmers. I get to go straight to you. And like I said, the nice part is you're in constant communication with all the manufacturers.
Yes.
So what's going on? I mean, it seems like we always used to have summer fill at reasonable rates. And now here we are, end of September, and I don't feel like we've seen prices that are super exciting for next year. We got commodity prices in the tank. What are we seeing right now? And first of all, let's tackle it. This is going to be a big bear to tackle. I know this. Let's tackle it first. What's going on? Why are the prices so elevated compared to historical?
At this point, the grain economics really don't support the fertilizer price that we're seeing. And at the end of the day, we're used to a supply-demand market where grain price drives demand. And right now we're in more of a supply-driven market. You look at the things that have happened. Last winter and spring was really a miserable year as far as production in North America. There were a lot of hiccups, which took a lot of the nitrogen production down that we really needed, to where on phosphates and urea, we really ended the year last year very, very low on inventory. And then since then, we continue to see the hit parade keep coming. It's been black swan event, but now we've had a flock of black swans coming through. You look at India and China. India's always been the big one for demand. China's always been the big one for exports. India has been on a trajectory where they are buying less and less due to more and more internal production. And now they have bottomed and they've started to go back up and buying more. And everybody expected that trajectory down to continue. And it was really to India's favor that everybody thought that, because if they are going to have to keep buying, they want to be able to buy that at the best possible price. And on the flip side, we've had China, who's been one of the world's largest exporters, both of phosphates and urea, pretty much essentially stop exporting on both products. Just slammed on the brakes. That was a little over a year ago that they did that. And now we're to a point where we're just seeing them re-enter the marketplace again. But imagine when one of your top suppliers all of a sudden disappears.
Speaking of top suppliers, talk about the impact of Russia-Ukraine, which is not new. I mean, we've been talking about this for 4 years, John. You would think that this is maybe caused, maybe we've figured out some type of alternative supply, but it almost seems like maybe there was some cushion, and that cushion's been slowly chipped away for 4 years, and now we're standing out in the cold.
Russia and Ukraine are both big nitrogen exporters as well. So the Russian-Ukraine war, like you said, we're getting kind of numb to it. But recently, Ukraine's targeted some of Russia's manufacturing facilities. Russia's shut down that pipeline of ammonia out to the coast. They don't want Russia to have income at this point to keep funding the war. So we get kind of numb to that one. And there's a lot of war going on right now, too. You look at Israel and Hamas and Iran and Iran's proxies. As you look at the effect of that, we don't think about Israel being a big fertilizer country, but they're the 5th largest manufacturer of potash. back to the Russia-Ukraine thing. Russia's a big manufacturer of potash. Belarus, one of Russia's proxies, is a big manufacturer of potash. So the tentacles to this are enormous, and it's hard to cover them all. But getting back to Iran and their proxies, the Houthi rebels, their favorite trick is to shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes.
Anytime they can, they like to shut down any Western vessels through there. Through the Strait of Hormuz, there's a lot of little countries that produce urea in that area and nitrogen in that area. And then, they shut that down. Together, they represent about 1/5 of the world's export urea.
Yeah.
They don't use a lot of it. A lot of those smaller producers aren't using a lot. They're selling a lot. So, I mean, that's definitely having an effect as well, along with politics. We're still early in the Trump administration.
Yep.
But very early in the Trump administration, we had a lot of uncertainty on his tariffs, what they were going to be. We didn't know the level or the value that was going to take on. So if you're looking at a 10% tariff or 50% tariff or 100% tariffs, when he's just kind of trying to make a point and spitballing out there.
Right.
Imagine you're an importer at that time and you don't know what your tariffs are going to be.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a high stakes game of poker where somebody changes the rules after your money's already on the table.
Right.
And it's a scary spot to be for the importers. So we haven't seen very good imports.
I'm glad that you brought that up, just the impact and how quickly the rules were changing and everything, because, we had a retailer that we work with on the Durham side. And so he was loading a train on January 31st. And the tariffs originally were supposed to go on February 1. And if that train wouldn't have been billed and pulled across the line by midnight that night, it was going to cost him $700,000. I mean, these are the types of stories that, everyone on the grain side and the fertilizer side is very similar. What they found was the contracts really made a big difference on who assumed that tariff risk, because if the contract was made destination the U.S., then the shipper received the tariff risk. And if it was an origin contract and the buyer was taking care of the freight to bring it over, then they bore the tariff risk. And so there was a lot of finger pointing around for, it felt like a couple months where people were like, I'm not paying for this. Are you paying for this? and so it was, it was really an interesting time, and we're certainly not completely out of the woods with it. It's definitely toned down a lot. But like you said, one of the weird things that we've got right now, it's not uncommon of all the countries that you listed. It's not uncommon for war to be happening in those countries. What's really weird is it seems like every exporter of nitrogen right now is in some type of conflict.
Yeah, and I don't know it's war for everybody, but between tariffs and war and the other things we have going on, it is just, it's hitting us from all angles.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of the hit parade keeps coming. There's a lot of other old things that we've forgotten about, like countervailing duties isn't new news, but that was a legal judgment against unfair trade practices on phosphates, but it is very much affecting the high price of phosphates. And then we're also entering hurricane season right now.
Yeah.
Through November, which even if a hurricane doesn't damage that phosphorus manufacturing point, if a hurricane makes landfall, they're going to idle it and shut down. It takes time to shut down. It takes time to board up the facilities, and then it takes time to get restarted again.
Well, and last year there were a couple through Florida that got smacked right in the center of it, and it did shut them down for a little while.
It shut them down, but it caused very little damage.
Mm-hmm.
So we were fortunate there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the biggest problem, like you said, is more so we're taking this, let's say it's a 4-inch tube that we're sucking all this demand through, and it shrinks it to 3 inches because
Yep.
all of a sudden we got less time that we're trying to get that same amount of product out into the network. I feel like last year it was managed okay. We made it, everything came together, but it's obviously you want it to be as seamless as possible.
Yep. Very
So-
much.
Cool. Well, okay, so those are two of the bigger products. Do you have any other ones that you are watching right now with elevated prices and you're saying, here's what's going on?
Urea and phosphates are definitely the big one. We
Yep.
covered potash a little
Right.
bit with Israel, Belarus, Russia. Ammonium sulfate, I would just add the note that demand seems to keep going up.
Yeah.
You look this last spring, we saw prices relatively high. Maybe not as bad as say phosphates were and are currently, but ammonium sulfate was still relatively high last spring.
Mhm.
Demand still increased. We still saw within our members an increased uptick in AMS.
Yeah.
AMS is primarily a byproduct in how it's made. We're not going to make more byproduct
Right.
in order to, have AMS for the farmers. So that's one that very much increases in demand, will affect the price a lot there.
Yeah, you don't fire up the ethanol plant to make more DDGs.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So, okay. So all this being said, in the last 30, 45 days, we have seen a glimmer of hope. We've probably seen prices come $100 a ton down, maybe on nitrogen. That being said, is this the start of a nice little relaxation in prices? Because I do think that you mentioned the farm economics, right? These manufacturers are not stupid. They know what farm economics are. And they know what they can afford to try and retail this stuff at. I'm a little bit concerned because you look at this national corn crop that we're looking at that, there's rumors of 190 plus bushel an acre national average. If we see something like that, there's going to be so much demand through the corn belt for N. Our demand is going to be high. We're already in a tight market. Give me some glimmers of hope.
Well, there's some out there.
Okay, good.
First off, you look at politics. Tariffs could change tomorrow on a whim.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that. We're starting to find what I think is a little bit more stability there. And the other thing that's happening is with China exporting, there's enough urea in the world that it's got to go somewhere.
Right.
Regardless of tariffs, we're kind of almost hitting the point where regardless of what they are, they need a relief valve. The last India tender set a record for tons offered. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
That means on the world stage, there's a lot of urea being offered. August, we saw an improvement on imports, which had been exceptionally low. There's rumors, they're unconfirmed at this point, that probably September and October are going to be better import months as well. Right now, the other thing we've been seeing that I didn't touch on yet is a lot of the North American production has been on turnaround through the summer and early fall.
What is turnaround, John?
So turnaround is with a nitrogen plant, you have certain parts that as you heat and cool, expand and contract. And they don't measure that in millimeters, centimeters, or even inches. They measure it in feet. So you can imagine that if you've got pipes that are stretching feet, sooner or later, that's going to have a negative effect on them, and you're going to have to do maintenance.
Yeah.
So if you don't take a plant down and do maintenance on it at least every 2 years, the plant will take itself down for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, It's required that we do those turnarounds every 2 years, and the other thing that COVID did, I mean, we're kind of past the big thing with COVID, but it bunched all of those together because due to the COVID restrictions, outside people were not able to get into the plants to come and do those turnarounds for them and do that required maintenance. So we've kind of hit here at the end of summer and early fall. A lot of turnarounds, but as we get into November, we should have a lot of the production up and going again here in the US and Canada.
Sure. So this is where, you know, working with a cooperative like us, our member owners are going to see some benefit, because if we can wait and encourage our members to wait, we're going to try and get that optimum price. We're going to wait for the market to kind of get, let's say, back in shape a little bit. We get these manufacturers that come back online. Hopefully they've got more product that's able to move than what they are able to get sold. And that's when deals get struck.
Yep. Like we said, it's been very much a supply-driven market. We're seeing some hopes. As long as China keeps exporting, I think China's going to change how they're doing business. After they sat out for a year, everybody kept thinking they were coming back.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see China a lot more in and out of the market when it suits them. Right now, prices are high. Their inventories are at record highs. It suits them to sell it right now.
Right. And you got to think about it too. You mentioned Russia funding their war, right? You have to think about it as these countries are almost a business, especially the Communist Party of China. They are going to be looking at this and saying, boy, there is really high prices on this stuff. If we can sell a bunch of it when we're sitting on it, that's going to be more income for us as a country.
Absolutely. Yep. So they're very much looking at that, between our production getting running again, some of the tariffs getting settled. I'm not super hopeful on a lot of these wars that are out there. They seem to be very determined people on both sides.
Yeah, I was really optimistic that President Trump seemed to have a really good meeting with Vladimir Putin in August, I believe, is when they met. And then it looked optimistic, and then all of a sudden we got a news cycle and it was very not optimistic again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that one would be a big help if we're able to see a conclusion to that conflict.
Politics are extremely difficult to predict.
Yes.
But that's definitely something to be watching for the future. The other glimmer of hope I see is, as you were saying when we were talking before this, the cure for high prices is high prices.
Yeah.
Everybody knows these economics don't work. Do I know what's going to happen? No, I don't, but I know something could happen. One of those somethings is we've been in a cycle of taking marginal ground that was in pasture and breaking that up and turning it into crop ground.
Yeah.
You look at where the cattle price is right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we see some of that go back the other direction where some of the marginal farm ground ends up getting put back into pasture?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's just something logically that I can look at. And I know that when things get this out of whack, something has to change and usually will change.
Well, and even if it's not pasture, feedstuffs, right? So maybe it's still tillable ground, but we're changing what that is. So if it's stuff that's not coming to the elevator, that also reduces the supply demand on the grain markets and changes some things. So I do think that I know that I've had conversations with people that are considering some of those moves. So I do think we'll see some degree of acreage go that way. Is it going to be a lot? Probably not. But I feel like this cattle market is here for a few more years.
Mhm.
And so there's going to be people that are going to say, you know what, this is maybe going to make a little bit more sense.
Yep. Very well could happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've had a really wet year, John.
Yes, we have.
My wife and I were talking about this last weekend, and I said it's been very atypical because it's rare typically in Western North Dakota that you break through that 1 inch, or definitely not that 1.5 inch mark. And this year we've really had 3 or 4 rain events. We had a week of rain in May where we got 4 inches. We had 2 weeks of rain in July and August that brought, at my house, 10 inches. And now we recently had another one that brought us another 2 inches. So with that, and, we're finding a few more bushels than what we had thought about earlier. I mean, I got to think that if there was any N left in the ground, it's mobilized. What do you have for tips and tricks for these guys?
I definitely think that we need to be soil testing.
Yeah.
If we're doing any fall crops at all. I've been hearing anecdotally that it is all over the board.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of places where there's a lot less nitrogen than what people thought.
Yeah.
It doesn't just all go into the grain, it also goes into the straw.
Yeah.
So if you had a healthy looking stand that maybe didn't bushel as well as you thought, we're really depleted on our nitrogen values.
Yeah.
So make sure you know what you're doing before you go out and do something in the fall. Soil testing is always a great tool.
Yep. And Sarah is out with the pickup right now. She's just started her soil testing season. So give her a call, get on the list.
Yep. And then I would also just say that fall application is some of the cheapest insurance that you're going to buy as a farmer every year. What happens if you have a wet spring? What happens if you have a late thaw? Everybody in the ag industry dreads those compacted years. Getting a little bit of it on in the fall does wonders for relieving a lot of stress when it comes springtime.
Yeah.
Maybe there's agronomic reasons why you don't want to do that, but when it comes to the application and just getting things done, you usually don't regret having something caught up or maybe a little bit ahead when you hit that spring season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jon, anything else that we didn't touch on that you wanted to hit before we wrap up for the day?
That covers it for me. Thanks again for having me. I had a blast.
Well, I really appreciate you making the trip all the way from Great Falls out here to come and sit down with us. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to On the Horizon. If our conversation today sparked your interest, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Stay connected by following @Horizon Resources Co-op on Facebook and Instagram and explore the world of agriculture with us. We're excited to continue bringing you real conversations with Horizon Resources industry partners, member owners, and employees, discovering more about your local neighbors and community friends. Until next time, keep looking towards the horizon.
Horizon Resources, solutions for your success.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be used or considered as an offer or a solicitation to buy or sell commodities. Horizon Resources does not make any representation, warranty, or guarantee as to the completeness, accuracy, timeliness, or suitability of any information contained within any part of this podcast. Horizon Resources does not accept any liability for any loss or damage, including without limitation loss of profit, which may arise directly or indirectly from use or reliance on such information. Whilst the information provided has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, Horizon Resources does not attest to its accuracy or completeness. Horizon Resources reserves the right to change any source without restriction or notice. The information herein is indicative only and is subject to change.